I still remember that night. It's burned into my mind, like an old scar that won't heal, but you can never forget. My name's Charlie, and I've been a trucker for over 15 years. I've seen it all, the good, the bad, and everything in between. But that night was different. I can still feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand up every time I think about it. It was late. Real late. I was driving through the middle of nowhere, somewhere in the Nevada desert. No lights for miles, just the endless stretch of highway with nothing but the stars above. I was hauling some heavy equipment, just another boring night on the road. The radio was static-filled, the kind of silence that makes your mind wander. I'd pulled over at a small, run-down truck stop around midnight. The place was practically deserted. Just a couple of other rigs parked in the lot, a faint hum of fluorescent lights buzzing above. I went in to grab a coffee, hoping to stay awake for the last stretch of the drive. The woman behind the counter, her name was Ruth, gave me a tired smile but didn't say much. She was used to people like me passing through. But as I sat there, sipping my coffee, something felt off. The air was thick, like there was something in it that didn't belong. I tried to shake it off, told myself I was just tired. But then, the sound of tires on gravel echoed outside, and I looked up to see a car pull in, an old, beat-up sedan. It looked like it had been through hell, but the guy driving it didn't seem much better. He stepped out of the car, his face shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat, his movements slow, deliberate. He didn't make eye contact with me. Didn't speak to Ruth either. He just walked inside, stood at the counter, and ordered a coffee, never saying a word. I don't know why, but my gut told me something was wrong. Maybe it was the way he kept his head down or the fact that his hands were shaking. I finished my coffee quickly and paid Ruth, nodding as I left. But as I stepped out into the night, the hairs on my neck stood up again. The guy had followed me outside, but instead of getting back into his car, he stood by the pump, staring into the darkness like he was waiting for something. I didn't think much of it at first. Truckers see weird things all the time. But as I climbed back into my rig, I saw him in the corner of my eye, still standing there, motionless. Something wasn't right. I started the engine, got ready to pull out, but then I heard it. A faint sound, like a scraping. It was coming from behind me. I looked in the rearview mirror. The guy, he was still there, but now, he was closer. Too close. And something was in his hand. I didn't wait to see more. I slammed the gas pedal and took off, my tires kicking up dust as I sped down the highway, away from that strange man, away from that eerie silence. But as I drove, I kept looking in the rearview mirror. I couldn't help it. The man was gone. But something in the distance. A shape, a figure was following me on the road. I thought I was just tired. But that thought quickly faded and the truck's lights illuminated a figure standing in the middle of the road. The nightmare was just beginning. I slammed the brakes, heart racing, my breath short. The truck skidded to a halt just a few feet from the figure in the road. My mind couldn't process what I was seeing. There, in the middle of the highway, stood a man, no, not a man. A shadow. His outline was unclear, distorted, as if the darkness itself had shaped him. I blinked, trying to focus. The headlights of my rig cast an eerie glow over the figure, but it didn't move, didn't react. The air felt suffocating, thick like I was breathing through a wet cloth. The only sound was the gentle hum of the truck's engine and the wind. I should have backed up, I should have driven away. But there was something pulling me in, something about that figure that made me want to know, made me want to see what was really there. A mistake I'd never get the chance to undo. I stared at the figure. It was wearing a dark coat, old, worn, and frayed at the edges. Its face was covered, hidden in shadows, but I could feel its eyes, like they were burning through me. The longer I stared, the more I felt wrong. Like something ancient, something evil, was standing in front of me. I swallowed hard, my palms sweaty against the steering wheel. Then, a noise. A soft scraping sound. It was the same sound I had heard back at the truck stop, the one that made me look in the rearview mirror. I glanced behind me, nothing. But when I turned back to the road, he was closer. He had moved without me seeing it, now standing only a few feet from the front of my truck. That's when I saw it. His hands, no, they weren't hands. They were twisted, like gnarled branches, with sharp, jagged fingers that seemed to bend in unnatural ways. His left hand was raised, palm open, like he was reaching for me. And that's when I heard it, faint at first, but growing louder, whispers. Low, raspy whispers that came from every direction. From the wind. From the trees. From the very road itself. I had no time to think. I slammed the truck into reverse, throwing the gears, the engine roaring as I backed up so fast, the tires screamed against the asphalt. My heart pounded in my chest as I glanced in the mirrors. That figure was still there, still standing in the middle of the road, just watching. But then, I don't know how to explain it, it started to move. Slowly at first, then faster. It didn't walk, it glided, like it was floating just above the ground, its twisted fingers reaching out, stretching, growing longer as it came closer. I didn't know what it wanted, but I knew one thing: if I didn't get away now, I'd never get out of there alive. I shifted gears again and floored the gas pedal, my truck tearing down the road, but the figure, it was gaining on me. Every time I glanced at the rearview mirror, it was closer. It wasn't running, it was moving at an unnatural speed, like it was traveling through the air, just inches from the ground, but somehow always just behind me. I could hear its whispers growing louder, more frantic. And the scraping sound, it was closer now. It was coming from inside the truck, from underneath. Something was moving there, something was scratching at the metal, trying to get inside. My hands gripped the wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The road stretched on forever, no exits, no lights. Nothing but endless darkness. I couldn't stop, I couldn't slow down, if I did, I knew it would catch me. But there was nowhere to go. Nowhere to hide. And every time I glanced in the mirror, the figure was still there, always just behind me, its face hidden beneath that shadowed hood, its hand reaching, scraping. I don't know how long I drove, minutes, hours. Time lost all meaning. But then I saw something. Up ahead. A light. A truck stop. A place to pull over. Maybe I could make it. Maybe I could get out. I pushed my foot harder on the gas, the engine roaring like a beast, but the figure wasn't letting up. It was getting closer and closer, until I finally reached the truck stop. Tires screeched as I jerked the rig to a halt, jumping out of the cab in a panic. But when I turned around to look, there was nothing. No shadow. No figure. Just the empty road behind me. I stood there, gasping for air, trying to convince myself it was just a bad dream, just my mind playing tricks. But deep down, I knew. It wasn't over. I don't know how long I stood there, staring down the empty road, trying to convince myself it was just fatigue, just a bad dream. But I couldn't shake the feeling. The feeling that something had been watching me, something that I couldn't see but could sense, feel, deep in my bones. I slowly turned back toward the truck stop, trying to focus on the here and now. I was nearly shaking, my mind still reeling from what I'd seen, or thought I'd seen. The neon lights flickered above me, casting a cold, harsh glow over the cracked pavement. The night air felt colder than it had before. I stepped inside the diner, trying to calm my nerves. The place was still as empty as before. Ruth was behind the counter, her head down, scribbling something in a notebook. She didn't look up when I entered, didn't even acknowledge me. I took a seat at the counter, trying to act casual, trying to act like everything was normal. But my hands were shaking too much to hide it. Coffee? Ruth asked, her voice thick with exhaustion. Yeah, please, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I wasn't sure if I even wanted coffee. I just needed something to keep me awake. As she poured it, I noticed something strange. The room had fallen silent, too silent. The usual hum of the fridge, the faint clinking of dishes, the buzz of the overhead lights, everything was gone. And then, out of nowhere, I heard it. A faint knock on the door. I glanced over. Through the glass, I could see a figure standing outside. The same damn figure. I froze. My heart skipped a beat. My stomach twisted into a knot. The man, or whatever it was standing in the same spot I had seen him earlier, his back turned toward the door, facing the highway. Ruth, I said, my voice trembling. Did you see that guy out there? She didn't answer. She didn't even look up from the coffee pot. She just muttered something under her breath that I couldn't hear, as if she hadn't even heard me. I turned back to the window. The figure was still there, standing motionless, like it had been before. I don't know why, but I felt this pull to go outside and confront it. Before I could think, my legs were moving, carrying me toward the door. My hand reached for the handle, but I hesitated. Something wasn't right. There was something wrong about that figure, something unnatural. It was like a magnet, pulling me toward it, drawing me in. I slowly turned back to Ruth. She was still standing there, her eyes fixed on the counter. She didn't seem to acknowledge me at all, even though I was standing right in front of her. I felt a chill in the air, a strange sensation of emptiness, like the world around me was holding its breath. I opened the door. The night air hit me like a slap to the face. The figure was closer now. It had moved, but not in a way that made any sense. It was still far away, still standing in the middle of the road, but its head had turned. Its eyes, those glowing, soulless eyes, locked onto mine, and for a brief moment, I could swear I heard it whisper my name. Charlie, I felt a sudden, cold rush through me. My heart raced. I didn't know what to do. But then, the whispers started, louder this time, coming from all directions. They were all saying the same thing, repeating it over and over, "Come, come, come." I stumbled backward, my hands fumbling for the door handle. I had to get inside, away from that thing. But as I turned back, I noticed something horrifying. The truck stop lights were flickering. The air had grown thick, heavy with a presence I couldn't understand. And that's when I realized, there was no escape. The figure wasn't just following me. It was controlling the air around me, controlling the very space I occupied. It had a power I couldn't comprehend. And I was trapped in it. I ran back inside the diner, slamming the door shut behind me. I looked back out the window. The figure hadn't moved. But now, it was no longer standing still. It was shifting, moving in a way that defied physics. Its limbs stretched, twisted, and elongated, pulling itself toward the diner at a terrifying speed. I could see its hand, those twisted, jagged fingers, reaching out toward me through the glass. I screamed, my throat raw, but it was no use. I was trapped, stuck in a nightmare that was slowly becoming my reality. And that's when Ruth finally spoke. "It's too late now," she said, her voice as cold as ice. She looked up, her face pale, her eyes empty. "He's already here. He's always been here." Her words didn't make sense. I tried to run, but my legs wouldn't move. It felt like the world around me had frozen. The whispers grew louder. The figure was closer now, just on the other side of the window. I could feel the air grow colder, and then, the lights went out. And everything went black. I don't know how long I was unconscious for. Could have been minutes. Could have been hours. When I finally came to, everything was dark, pitch black. I was lying on the cold, hard floor of the diner, my body aching as if I'd been hit by a truck. The first thing I noticed was the silence. That eerie, heavy silence. The kind of silence that feels like the world has been sucked out of existence. My heart raced as I sat up, trying to shake off the dizziness. I reached for my phone, desperate for light, desperate to know what the hell was going on. But when I looked at the screen, it was dead. The battery had been drained, completely. I cursed under my breath, then looked around. The diner was still the same. Same cracked linoleum floor. Same peeling wallpaper. But something was wrong. Something was different. I stood up slowly, every step tentative. The air felt thicker, heavier, like I was walking through a fog. My skin crawled. There was an odd smell in the air, like old, decaying wood. It was almost suffocating. I turned to the counter. Ruth was still there, sitting in the same spot, motionless. Her eyes were wide open, but her expression was blank, frozen. It wasn't just her face that was still, the entire room seemed frozen in place, like time had stopped. Then, I heard it again, the scraping sound. It was faint at first, just a whisper on the edge of hearing. But it grew louder, closer. My pulse quickened. The noise was coming from somewhere deep within the diner, from the back room, the storage area. I had no choice. I had to see what was making that sound. I had to know what was happening. I stepped toward the back door. It creaked when I touched it, and as it opened, a cold draft washed over me. The lights in the back room were out, but I could still see shapes moving in the darkness. The walls seemed to shift, to bend, like they were warping under some unseen force. My breath caught in my throat when I saw what was standing there. The figure. The same one that had been chasing me. But now, it was different. Its body was larger, more twisted, its limbs unnaturally elongated, stretching across the room in ways that made no sense. Its face was covered, but I could feel its eyes, those glowing, dead eyes, locked onto me. It wasn't just standing there anymore. It was moving, slithering across the floor toward me, its sharp fingers dragging along the ground like claws. I froze. My legs wouldn't move. It was like my body was paralyzed. The whispers started again, louder now, repeating my name in a language I didn't understand. Charlie, I looked back at Ruth. She hadn't moved. Her eyes were fixed on me, but it was clear, she wasn't Ruth anymore. She was something else. Something wrong. I turned back to the figure, my pulse thundering in my ears, but I knew deep down I couldn't escape. The diner wasn't just some old building in the middle of nowhere anymore. It had become part of this thing, this nightmare that was swallowing me whole. The figure stopped in front of me, its hand reaching out slowly, like it was savoring the moment. The whispers were deafening now, so loud I couldn't think straight. And then it spoke. It wasn't a voice. It was more like a presence, a force that filled the entire room. I could hear it in my mind, feel it scraping against my thoughts, like nails on a chalkboard. You shouldn't have come back, Charlie, it said. You were supposed to stay away. But now you're part of it. Part of us. My heart dropped into my stomach. I couldn't breathe. The words didn't make sense, but I understood them. I understood that whatever this thing was, it had been waiting for me. It had been waiting for years. I didn't know what it meant, but I knew one thing. It wasn't just some man in the road. It was something ancient, something that had always been there, pulling in souls, one by one. I tried to run, but my legs didn't work. My body was frozen, trapped in place. The figure's fingers brushed my skin, cold as death. It didn't hurt, but it felt wrong. Like it was draining me, taking something from me that I could never get back. And then, as if by some dark force, the world around me started to shift. The diner, the walls, everything began to warp and twist, like reality itself was being torn apart. It was as if I was being pulled into another dimension, into a place where time didn't exist, where there was no escape. The last thing I saw before everything went black was Ruth's face, no longer human, no longer a person at all. Just a hollow shell of a thing, grinning, its eyes burning with an empty void. And I knew, with terrifying certainty, that I was never getting out of here. That this was where I belonged now. When I opened my eyes again, I wasn't in the diner anymore. At first, I thought I was still dreaming, trapped in some twisted nightmare. But the cold, hard truth hit me when I tried to move. My body wasn't my own anymore. I was lying on a road, the pavement rough against my skin. The air was thick and dry, and the smell of burning oil and dust lingered in the air. It felt like I was on the highway again, the same highway I had been driving on before everything changed. I tried to sit up, but my limbs felt heavy, like they were weighted down with lead. I groaned, pushing myself up on shaky arms, but when I looked around, my breath caught in my throat. There was no sky. No stars. No moon. Just an endless stretch of highway, stretching on forever in both directions. The road curved into darkness, disappearing into the void. There were no signs, no lights, no trees, just an endless, black abyss around me. I staggered to my feet, panic rising in my chest. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. My mind spun, trying to make sense of what had happened, what was happening. The last thing I remembered was the figure, the whispers, Ruth's face, twisted and hollow. And now, here I was, standing on an empty road in the middle of nowhere, alone in the dark. But I wasn't alone. Not really. I heard it before I saw it. The faint hum of an engine. Tires rolling over asphalt, growing louder, closer, like something was approaching. I turned around, my pulse quickening. The truck. My rig. It appeared from the darkness, headlights blinding, like a phantom emerging from the void. It was my truck, the same one I'd been driving before, but it looked different. Twisted. The metal was rusted, the paint peeling, and the wheels spun in unnatural ways, screeching as if they were fighting against something inside them. It pulled up next to me, the engine idling, and the door swung open. I didn't want to get in. I knew deep down that if I did, I'd be sealed in this hell forever. But something inside me, something primal, something terrified, urged me forward. The door was open. The truck was waiting. And there, sitting behind the wheel, was the figure. It was no longer just a man. It had taken on something else, something more, something worse. Its face was covered with that shadowy, shifting hood, but I could feel its eyes, burning through me. The figure didn't say anything. Didn't need to. It was in my mind, deep in my soul, pressing in on every thought I had. Get in, it whispered, but it wasn't with its mouth. The voice came from everywhere, echoing through my skull. I didn't move. I couldn't move. The truck's engine growled louder, almost like it was angry, like it was hungry. The whispers picked up again, swirling around me, inside me. They were the same ones I had heard before, in the diner, in the dark. My name. Repeated over and over. Charlie. Charlie. Charlie, it wasn't the figure speaking anymore. It was the road. It was the air. It was the darkness itself. I could hear the whispers so clearly now. I could feel them crawling under my skin. The figure's hand reached toward me from the driver's seat, its fingers elongated and twisting unnaturally, like they were made from something that shouldn't exist. It wasn't offering help. It was commanding me. Get in, it said again, louder now, more forceful. I knew if I got in, I'd be trapped for good. I'd never leave this endless road. But what choice did I have? There was nowhere else to go. The road stretched on, unending, a black pit that swallowed everything around it. I closed my eyes, knowing that if I opened them again, there would be no turning back. I stepped into the truck. The moment I did, everything changed. The air grew colder, heavier. The truck's interior was dim, lit only by the eerie glow of the dashboard lights. The figure didn't speak again, but I could feel its presence in the air, suffocating. The road beneath us seemed to stretch on forever, the same endless highway, no end in sight. The figure didn't drive the truck like a normal person. It didn't need to steer or shift gears. It was like it was the truck, like it was the road itself. The tires hummed as they spun over the asphalt, the sound vibrating through my bones. I wanted to scream, wanted to run, but my body wouldn't respond. I was frozen in place, trapped. The whispers were louder now, a deafening chorus that filled my mind with images I couldn't escape. Faces, blurred, twisted, their eyes hollow and empty, like they were part of the road too. They reached for me, clawing, begging, demanding. "Join us," they whispered, their voices echoing through the truck's interior. "You belong to the road now." I wanted to fight back. I wanted to resist. But deep down, I knew there was no point. The road had claimed me. The figure had claimed me. And now I was just another passenger on this endless ride to nowhere. The truck sped up, faster and faster, the road stretching on without end. And as I looked out of the window, I saw it, a figure, standing at the edge of the highway, watching me. It was the same figure I had seen before. It was all of them. And I realized, with horrible clarity, that I was never going to escape. This road, this nightmare, it was my eternity now. I was just another lost soul, caught in the endless loop of the highway, forever. I've been driving for what feels like years now, trapped in this endless loop. The truck hasn't stopped, the road hasn't changed. There's no sun, no moon, no time. Just the same stretch of empty, barren highway. I don't know how much longer I can keep my sanity. I thought I was the only one here, but I was wrong. There are others like me, trapped in this hellish existence. Faces. Glimpses in the rearview mirror, fleeting shadows, people staring at me through the windows, their eyes empty and hollow. The more I look, the more I see, lost souls, stuck in the same nightmare. They're not just watching me. They're waiting for me to join them. I've tried everything. I've tried screaming, trying to get out, but the truck doesn't stop. The road doesn't end. Every time I think I see something, an exit, a turnoff, a place to escape, it disappears the moment I get close. I've tried to open the door, but it won't budge. I can't leave. And the figure, the one driving the truck, it's still with me, still looming over me. It doesn't speak. It doesn't need to. I feel it every time I close my eyes, watching, waiting. Its presence is suffocating, filling every inch of the cab. I know it's the road itself, the nightmare incarnate, controlling everything. But it's more than that, it's alive, somehow, feeding off of my fear, my hopelessness. The whispers are louder now. They've stopped speaking to me individually. Now, they're all together, swirling around me, echoing inside my skull. They've become a chorus, a relentless, deafening cacophony. Join us. Join us. Join us, the words keep repeating. They've started to feel like my own thoughts, like the road is inside my head, rewriting everything I am. It's becoming harder to think clearly. I forget what day it is, what time it is, what I am. All I know is that I'm trapped in this nightmare, and there's no way out. I've tried to talk to the others, the faces in the rearview mirror, the ones I catch glimpses of as I speed down the road. But they don't respond. They just stare at me, their eyes wide and vacant, their faces frozen in terror. They're all as trapped as I am, just passengers on this eternal ride. I've come to realize that we're all part of it now. Part of the road. Part of the thing that watches over us, the thing that feeds off us, the thing that controls everything. I'm no longer sure where the truck ends and I begin. The line between me and the figure is blurred. I'm no longer sure if I'm even me anymore. I've tried to fight it. I've tried to wake up from this nightmare. But there's no waking up. There's no escape. It's just the road. And the whispers. And the endless, unbroken cycle. And then, last night, something changed. For the first time, the road shifted. It twisted, like a snake curling around itself. The truck veered off course, suddenly swerving, dragging me to a place I hadn't seen before. A place that wasn't part of the loop. I was finally free. Or so I thought. I looked out of the windshield and saw something in the distance. A place. A building. A light. A truck stop. I couldn't believe it. It looked real, realer than anything else I'd seen in this nightmare. I drove toward it, faster and faster, my heart pounding in my chest. Maybe this was it. Maybe I could finally escape. But as I pulled into the lot, something didn't feel right. The building was old, run down, the lights flickering. There was no one around. Just darkness. I parked the truck, my hands trembling. I stepped out into the cold air, and as soon as my feet hit the ground, I felt the change. The air was thick, suffocating. The ground felt wrong. Like I wasn't standing on earth anymore. I turned around to look at my truck, and that's when I saw it. The figure. It was standing at the back of the truck, its face still hidden beneath the shadowy hood, but now, it was different. It wasn't the same being anymore. It was no longer just a shadow, it was me. The figure was wearing my clothes. My face. It had taken me. I froze, unable to move, as it stepped forward. Its hand reached out toward me, its fingers twisting unnaturally, just like before. And then it spoke, its voice so familiar, it sent a chill down my spine. "You're part of the road now," it said. I tried to scream, tried to run, but my body didn't respond. The figure reached out and touched my chest, and the moment it did, everything shifted. The ground beneath me started to fall away, the truck stopped, the world, everything, breaking apart into darkness. And now I know what it is. The road never ends. It never stops. It's not just a highway. It's a prison. A cycle. A place where souls get trapped, pulled in by the endless, consuming pull of the dark. We're all passengers, waiting for our turn to become part of it, to join the road. And I'm one of them now. Just another soul trapped in the endless loop. The whispers are inside me now, louder than ever. They've stopped calling me by name. Now they call me by my number. Passenger 159. There is no escape. And there never will be. I've been driving for so long, I've forgotten what it feels like to be human. The truck, the road, the endless black, this is my world now. A prison made of asphalt, my mind a blur of endless whispers, twisted faces, and the haunting truth that there is no escape. I know now that the road is alive. It feeds off us. It feeds off fear, despair, the hopelessness of knowing you'll never escape. We are all passengers in this nightmare, all trapped in the same cycle of endless driving, endless waiting, and endless losing ourselves. The others, those souls I see in the rearview mirror, have become part of the road, part of the darkness. I've lost count of how many times I've looked in that mirror and seen their empty eyes staring back at me. Their faces are twisted, disfigured, their bodies contorted in unnatural ways as they crawl toward me, forever reaching, forever searching for a way out that doesn't exist. Sometimes, I think I see a glimpse of something else in that mirror. A face. A face I know. A face I remember. My own. But I'm not me anymore. I'm not Charlie. I'm just another part of the road now, another soul caught in its endless loop. Every turn, every mile, every stretch of black highway feels like a reminder that I am lost, that I am nothing. The whispers have stopped calling me by name. Now, they just echo inside my skull, a chorus of tortured voices, all asking the same thing, will you join us? But it's not a question anymore. It's a demand. It's the truth. I've tried to stop the truck, tried to slam on the brakes, tried to break free, but nothing works. The truck moves on its own, the wheels turning without a driver, the engine roaring like a beast, dragging me along with it. It doesn't matter how hard I fight, how much I scream. The road keeps going. The darkness keeps pulling. And now, I see something ahead. It's the same thing I've seen so many times before, but it's different now. A flicker of light in the distance. A sign. A truck stop. I don't even know why I bother anymore. I know what will happen. I'll pull in, the doors will open, and the same figure will be waiting. It always is. Always watching. Always waiting. I know what it wants. It wants me to join. I pull in, my hands gripping the wheel, my breath coming in shallow gasps. I don't want to get out. I don't want to step into the darkness. But I can't stop myself. The truck stops, the door swings open, and I step out onto the cracked asphalt. The truck stop is empty. No people. No sounds. Just the same cold, eerie silence. And then, I see it. The figure. It's standing there, in front of the building, waiting for me. But this time, it's not just a figure. It's me. The same face. The same clothes. The same haunted eyes. It's me, but it's not. It's what I've become. What we all become in the end. I step forward, knowing what's coming, but I can't stop myself. I'm already lost. The figure reaches out, its fingers twisting, and as it touches me, the world around me shifts. The lights flicker, the ground trembles, and the road stretches on forever. I feel my body dissolve into the air, into the darkness, into the road itself. I am no longer Charlie. I am the road. I am the figure. I am the endless night. And I will never escape.